Hello, welcome to our next class. Today we're going to be looking at comparing and contrasting. Comparing and contrasting means looking at the similarities and differences between two or more things. It's important to remember that the word comparison can itself mean discussing both similarities and or differences. So, when a question asks you to compare X and Y in terms of, you are expected to compare and contrast X and Y. There are three methods of comparing and contrasting that I'm going to show you on the next slides. Firstly, point-by-point comparisons. Point-by-point comparisons means each individual topic is compared and contrasted before moving on to the next topic. I'll give you an example now. So this is an example of a point-by-point comparison of the difference between college or university and high school, SMA. So let me read you this essay that I've modified from the website you can see in the bottom. If you are interested, you can go onto this website and see the full essay. I've highlighted in bold the key words. So the leap from high school to college is a large one. Many students enter post-secondary education expecting the experience to be the same as the one they had while at secondary school. These students are wrong to make this assumption, and they very quickly realize just how different college is. College costs more, presents more academic challenges, and offers a more social environment than high school. Did you see in that sentence 3 times the word more was used? Let's look at this point by point. Firstly, in terms of cost, college is more expensive than high school because of tuition, living expenses and books. Many students live in expensive dormitories. In contrast, high school students have no living expenses because the majority of high school students live at home with their parents for free. College is also more, there's that word again, college is also more expensive than high school when it comes to the cost of learning materials such as textbooks. Not only do college students have to pay more money than high school students for their education, college students also have much more work to do once their bills have been paid. So that first point was about cost. Now we're going to be looking at the second point, which is about workload. Second, the workload in college is more challenging than the workload in high school. College students are faced with the task of having to complete an average of 3 to 5 assignments per week, whereas high school students average only 1 to 3 assignments per week. There are more assignments in college, and they are also more challenging and can take up to 8 hours to complete. This is a really good example of a point-by-point comparison. Here's another example where a point-by-point comparison would be most useful. This is a figure actually from one of my research papers. I was conducting research in fishing communities about how resilient or vulnerable bagan owners, pemilik bagan, Captain Bagan, and ABK crew are to poverty. And I looked at 6 different areas: financial, human, and social capital. So because this is a complicated figure, it would be much easier in the text to start with a point-by-point comparison. So I would say, in figure A, we see that bagan owners are much less vulnerable to the effect of poverty than crew members. In figure B, we see something different. So you would compare them one figure at a time, because otherwise it would be too complicated to compare all of them at the same time. The second method compares all the similarities between 2 items before moving on to all of the differences. similarities first, then differences. I have an example to demonstrate this. So for this example, we're going to compare two countries, England and France. So I start with a summary sentence. Always very useful to do this, to explain at the top of the paragraph what this next paragraph is going to be about. England and France have both similarities and differences. The similarities are as follows. Many French and English people look the same. They farm the land in similar ways. The biodiversity, nature, is similar, and the types of food are alike. But there are also big differences. French people take time to enjoy their food, while English people eat in a hurry. In the south of France, the weather is very sunny, whereas in England, it is often raining. So in this example, we start with the similarities. Here they are. The similarities are as follows. And then we talk using words like this: same, similar, similar, like. This is common language when we are saying that something is the same. The second section explains the differences. There are also big differences. And here we use phrases like this: while. We make a point about French people, and then we contrast it with English people. And we do the same with the weather. In France, the weather is very sunny, whereas in England, it is often rainy. Thirdly, is an item-by-item comparison. In this case, various points relating to item 1 are discussed in a block of text, which may comprise one or more paragraphs. These same points are then discussed in relation to item 2 in a second block of text, in which comparisons are highlighted explicitly or implicitly. Arguably, this method has the advantage of being the least complex, although some would say it is less effective at emphasizing similarities or differences, because the different points of comparison are not discussed side by side in the same block of text. So here we have the item-by-item comparison, again using the difference between England and France. So the first paragraph speaks entirely about England, and then the second paragraph speaks mostly about France. So in England, the traditional diet is based on bread and potatoes with meat and vegetables. English people cook quickly and eat in a hurry, often a quick sandwich in front of their computer. In England, the weather is cool and it often rains. So again, in that first paragraph, we've only learnt about England. In the second paragraph, we're going to learn about France with a little bit of comparison at the end. In France, people take much longer to cook and eat their meals, sometimes spending 3 hours at lunchtime. In the south of France, the weather is warmer than England, and many English people go there on holiday to escape the rain we have in England. So this is what's called an item-by-item comparison. So here are some words and phrases associated with comparing and contrasting. Similarly, in the same way, likewise, neither, both. These are showing similarities. You'll learn more of these phrases through this lecture. Right, it's video time. I hope that you appreciate these videos. I've spent quite a bit of time trying to find the best resources on YouTube that I can find for you. And what I want you to learn from these videos is two things. One, I want you to learn comparing and contrasting. That's what we're learning in this class today. But I also want you to see where you can get high quality English teaching on YouTube. So in the future, if you are interested in improving your English, there are so many resources on YouTube. I would start with these ones because they're very high quality. So firstly, watch this excellent 10-minute video, and then after that, watch this 12-minute video. And I hope that you will really have a good understanding of comparing and contrasting after you've watched these 2 videos. Right, time to play a game. So there's this online game that I've found, and in this game you can select people, animals, places, things, or food. It's up to you. You choose what you're interested in, and then you need to click on the correct words and then enter them in the box. So have a try. This is going to practice both the right words to use and the right spelling of those words for comparing and contrasting. And now it's quiz time. I want you to click on this link and read this website. At the top of the website, it gives many words and phrases we commonly use when making comparisons. For example, this apple is as red as that apple. You see the phrase there? Is as red as. Or, this apple is more like a pear. That phrase, that word, more, we often use that. So the first part of the website is going to give you words and phrases that you will need. And then I want you to do practice 1 and practice 2, which is an online quiz testing your understanding of those words and phrases. Please do that now. Now, this is a shame, obviously. When I prepared this slide, I was hoping we would be in class, and then you could ask me questions about England and life in England and growing up in England and how it's different to Indonesia. So we can't really do that now, but I've left this slide in because perhaps you can think about what the differences are between England and Indonesia. There would be questions that you could ask. How is England similar to Indonesia? Do you prefer Indonesian food or English food? And then I have another example here. So, if I was to answer some of those questions, I would like to have done this in class, but sorry, I'm going to have to do this like this now. There are many differences between Indonesia and England, but there are also some similarities. The people are very different. English people are generally taller and often in a hurry. Indonesians smile more often and are normally more friendly. English people tend to be more individualistic. They will make decisions for themselves and know their own mind. Indonesians are typically more community-minded. They involve others in decision-making and feel uncomfortable if they do things on their own. Each country has different values. In Indonesia, respect for those in authority and guarding relationships is very important. In England, truth and right and wrong is more important than relationships. So at the moment, there is a lockdown in England because of the coronavirus. If people do not obey the rules and they leave their homes, their neighbours will phone up the police and report them to the police. Would this happen in Indonesia? Although there are differences, there are also similarities. In both places, there are kind people and selfish people. In both places, people are discontent and searching for a better life. In both places, people are asking big questions like, why am I here? What is the meaning of life? What will my future look like? Right, let's have a look at that text that I've just written. I've written in orange the words differences and similarities. You see, I use them several times. So those are very common words that we would use to compare and contrast. The word differences or different, and similarities or similar. Okay. Another thing that we often do in English is to compare and contrast by changing the word tall to taller, or changing the word friendly the friendly We are saying that one is more than the other. So English people are more tall, but we wouldn't say more tall, that would be wrong. Instead of saying more tall, we say taller. Another word we often use is the word more. More often, more individualistic, more community-minded, and so on. Now, when we are making the point about the similarities, we often use the word both. You see that here 3 times. In both places, there are kind and selfish people. In both places, and again, in both places. These are some phrases that we commonly use when making comparisons. So I wonder, do you like to talk about yourself? Most people do, if we're honest. We like to be asked questions and to talk about yourself. Again, this was a speaking activity I planned to do in class, so it might be more difficult to do it at home or in your course. But you can still pick up the phone and do it through WhatsApp with one of your friends. So I would like you to get in a pair, if you can, and talk about yourself in English for 5 minutes each. Describe your family, the place where you grew up, your hopes for the future. Then it's the next person's turn, your friend's turn. They will describe their family, the place where they grew up, and their hopes for the future. And then you have to ask a question: what is similar and what is different between you both? Right, now I have a written activity for you to do. In blue is one form of the sentence. Tom thought that the party would be more exciting than it turned out to be. You have to, using the word not in black, here we go, use the word not in such a way in this game to make the black sentence also correct. Let me help you by doing the first one for you. So the first one, in blue, it reads, Tom thought that the party would be more exciting than it turned out to be. And we can modify that sentence and shorten it by saying, the party was not as exciting as Tom had thought it would be. So that's what I want you to do. Complete all of these gaps. You'll need to stop the video and open the other PowerPoint file. So please stop the video and complete the example before carrying on the video. Great, let's look at the answers. The party was not as exciting as Tom had thought it would be. Let's get on with it. It was not as exciting. Well, I told you the answer to that one. So secondly, the word was much. Tom used to speak French much better than. That's a useful phrase. Much better than he does now. Again, the third one. There is not much difference between your essay and mine. We can write that in a different way. Your essay is very similar to mine. Note that this version is much shorter. In scientific writing, we want to reduce the words as much as we can. Fourthly, we have fairly similar opinions on climate change. Our opinions on climate change have quite a lot in common. Quite a lot in common. 5. The journal's titles are absolutely identical. The journals have exactly the same titles. 6. Our ideas on how to change the company have absolutely nothing in common. We have completely different ideas on how to change the company. 7. Compared to his holiday, mine was luxurious. And then my holiday was more luxurious than. Yeah. More than. It's the same as 2. Much better than. More than. And again, in number 8, Experts say that teenagers are more stressed than they used to be. So this is a phrase we often use, more than. Right, this is another speaking activity for you. Again, it would be easier if we were all in the classroom and we were doing this together, but we can't do that now. So I want you to try and find a friend, pick up the phone and phone a friend if you need to, because we're going to get in pairs, and then one person has to compare and contrast holidays in nature versus holidays in cities. So I've got a picture here of beautiful Lake Maninjau, and I want one of you to say why holidays in nature, climbing volcanoes, going to the beach, snorkeling, all of these things. What is better about nature than an urban, a city holiday? And then I want you to swap. And your friend is going to do the same, but they're going to say why cities are much better places to go on holiday. So what you're doing is you're comparing and contrasting nature holidays with city holidays. Another speaking activity, this one's a game for you. Again, I want you to get in pairs. And this is quite a fun game. All right? One person chooses an object and then describes it without using that word, but by comparing or contrasting with similar objects. All right? I'll give you an example. I am thinking about a fruit. The fruit is larger than a grape, but smaller than a watermelon. It does grow in parts of Indonesia, but not normally in West Sumatra. It's the fruit. The fruit can be peeled, but usually in England we eat it directly. What is it? Have a think, and then I'll show you on the next slide. If you want to think, press pause. Otherwise, you're going to see the answer in 3, 2, 1. It's an apple. Another game for you. Again, this is a lot of fun. If you are in pairs, one person chooses a famous person and describes him or her without using their name, but by comparing or contrasting him with similar people. So you could choose Harry Potter or David Beckham or George Clooney or anyone you like, and then you could say, yeah, Harry Potter is younger than me. He wears glasses, or his hair is lighter than mine, or darker than mine, or he has more hair than me, or less hair than me. Try and use those comparing and contrasting words to describe this person without using their name, and see if your friend can guess who you were thinking of. Great. Now I have 2 more videos for you to watch that I've found on YouTube that use comparison and contrasting language. So I want you to watch both of these videos. They're short. The first one is less than a minute, second one only 3 minutes. They're both about climate change, pemanasan global. And I want you to watch these videos. Please watch them through twice and see if you can hear the comparisons, the contrasting language that is used in these videos. Okay, I'm going to give you the answers in a minute, so press pause and watch those videos now. So in that Met Office video, the lady, after 15 seconds, she says, higher compared to pre-industrial levels. So yeah, higher, again we're adding and then the word compared to pre-industrial levels. Now after 30 seconds, she says the following. Have a look at this graph. The red areas shows the predictions the Met Office have made over the years, and the black lines show the actual temperatures they recorded. There is a close match. This is a simple and clear comparison. She is comparing actual temperatures with predicted temperatures. And in the NASA video, After 35 seconds, the comparison started. The largest temperature increases, yeah. The largest, the greatest. This is comparing where it is most, where the temperature is most increased. Again, after 1 minute 45, all around the globe, the land areas show a greater increase than. Remember, earlier we learned more than. Here we see greater than the surrounding oceans. The next one, models project warmer waters and increased precipitation. Warmer. So you're comparing the temperature of the water to what it was before. It is warmer than it was before. And lastly, in general, may I just say that is a great summary statement. If you are writing English and you are summarizing, you might want to say in general. Very useful sentence. In general, the dry regions are projected to see less precipitation, while the wet regions could see more. Okay? These regions see less, and then the comparison word, while. We're contrasting, while the wet regions could see more precipitation. Okay, still on the topic of climate change, I'm sure you're aware there are many different scenarios, kemungkinan, possibilities in the future about what the Earth will be like under different warming. And so here we have 5 different climate change scenarios. And then there was a summary statement. And it read like this. The SSP3 scenario of regional rivalry leads to continued population growth, but relatively low growth in GDP. In contrast, there's that word. We've made a statement and then we are describing something that is different. So we say in contrast, SSP1 and SSP5 show a peak and decline in population growth, but much higher GDP growth. Although they have a similar pattern of population growth, they show significantly different levels of GDP growth. Do you see that? So in this paragraph, the authors are comparing the similarities with the differences. And again, another slide about climate change. I hope you're reading often about climate change. This is a very important issue for all of us, whether we are involved in natural resource management, whether we're going to be working with farmers in the future. Climate change is a very important issue. So here we see 2 different plots comparing 2 different scenarios. And then this is written. The above plot shows the warming in near surface temperatures from 2006 to 2010, and then 2095 to 2099 for 2 different emissions. The overall temperature is going to rise, and the increase is far more severe in RCP 6.0. It can also be seen that the warming varies between regions, with the highest warming occurring in the northern latitudes. We see this is making the point that it is the greatest, the most is in the northern latitudes. Okay, we've got our last speaking activity again. If you can get in pairs, this is much easier than just speaking to the mirror. So you're in pairs, and then whether that's on the phone or you're physically with your friend, and I want you to ask your friend one of these questions. Do you prefer eating Minang food or Western food? Why do you feel that way? Or you could ask, how is your hometown different to other places you have been? How do you feel about those differences? What about this? In your opinion, is Indonesia getting better or worse? Why? Why not? Or lastly, how will life after university be different to life as a student? If you ask these kind of questions, you will certainly have to use the comparison and contrasting language that we've been learning and practicing in this class. Now, this slide is to help us prepare for your homework that I would like you to do. And we're going to be looking at renewable versus non-renewable sources of energy. So I've sent you an article via WhatsApp, and the article is called Renewable versus Non-Renewable. So I want you to read that article, and then I want you to note the comparison and contrasting language that's used. And then I want you to do a little bit of research to find out about electricity generation in West Sumatra. What kind of, how is power generated in West Sumatra? Does West Sumatra generate its own electricity? Do we buy electricity from Rio? Do we use hydroelectric power? Do we use coal? Do we use solar? Do we use wind? Do we use nuclear? Is there a nuclear power plant in West Sumatra? I want you to do some research and find out about power generation in West Sumatra. And then I want you to do this piece of work. I want you to write approximately 300 words. It can be 350, can be, but please no more than 400. Okay? And I want you to write about the future of energy production in West Sumatra. So firstly, with 1 or 2 sentences, describe how energy is produced now in the year 2020. Secondly, describe how energy is produced or will be produced in a perfect world in 2050. How will it be produced? Hydrogen cells, solar, wind, oil, nuclear? How will it be produced? Then, the key thing is this. I want you to compare and contrast these two situations, the present day with the future. And of course, I want you to try and use phrases from this class. I have an example for you now, but I'm not using the same topic. I'm not using power generation. I'm going to be talking about food. Have a look at this example. So here's an example using food. Again, there are 3 paragraphs. Here's the first one, describes what's happening in the year 2020. The second paragraph describes what's happening in the year 2050. And the third is a comparison. And this is what I want you to do. I am using food. I want you to do energy and electricity production. But let me read this as an example. In the year 2020, most people, again that word, most people in the world have a wheat or rice-based diet which is supplemented by vegetables and protein. The amount of meat a person is able to eat depends on how wealthy they are. Beef is the most expensive, again that word, with tofu cheaper and chicken and fish somewhere in between. Now we're looking at what I imagine the situation will be like in the year 2050. In the year 2050, most people in the world will still have a wheat and rice-based diet, but because of global warming and overfishing, cattle farming will have reduced. As a comparison, many fish are extinct and new forms of protein have been found. Protein will be grown in laboratories and formed into protein burgers. Well, that sounds disgusting. Because fish are more scarce, there's less of them, and they're more expensive, people will eat fish bits, which are actually made from small shrimps that are mashed together. It really does sound disgusting. And now the comparison between the two. Although in both 2020 and 2050, most people depend on carbohydrates as their main source of energy, the source of their protein is quite different. People in 2020 eat beef, chicken and fish and supplement this with tofu. However, it's a useful word for a contrast. However, in 2050, animal protein will be very expensive, making the point it's very different, very expensive, and new forms of protein will have been created. These protein burgers and fish bits will be a cheaper way to meet the protein needs of the world's population. This is an example using, 150 words. I want you to write 300 words, and not about food. I want you to write it about energy in West Sumatra. Please do not copy. Please do not work together. Please do not just download something from the web. I want to see you working on your own to produce something about West Sumatran energy production using the language that we've learned today, the language of comparing and contrasting. Thanks very much for listening, and I hope this class has been helpful.